What's up, guys? Welcome back to my personal finance channel. My name is Kyle Pepe, and today we are going to be talking about liquidity pools, decentralized finance, mining, liquidity mining, staking, APRs, numbers. Yeah. But seriously, today we're going to be talking about liquidity pools, liquidity mining, staking, and all that good stuff. These things are paying like, I don't know, anywhere from 100% APR up to, 3, 4, 5,000%, up to 20-some thousand%, and in some cases in the millions of percent, at least initially. So let's get into it. So what is DeFi? DeFi, first and foremost, is decentralized finance. If you don't really know what that is, then I don't know why you're here. No, I'm just kidding. So decentralized finance is basically taking away the centrality of finance. So think about the traditional banking system, right? You have banks, you have a Wells Fargo, you have a Citi, you have a Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, right? All of these are centralized institutions, right? There's a CEO, you go to that institution in order to handle your banking needs, and therefore it is centralized around that institution. Decentralized finance, meaning there isn't really an owner. It's either an anonymous organization that sort of sets it up, but there's no owner to what's going on. It's code that's deployed, and then a bunch of people run this and just sort of make it happen. So first and foremost, Bitcoin, right? That's sort of the start to all of this stuff. The idea is that the code was deployed. There is no one person controlling it. It is just code that was written, and those are sort of the rules of the road, right? Like that's what is Bitcoin. It's just code. People do mining, they validate transactions, blah, 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 blah. But there's no person, there's no entity you go to, there's no one that controls the network and decides things, right? It's a sort of a voting process based on how much of the compute power, how many nodes or miners that you have running that sort of make the voting process and how that works. So it's a majority rules. So decentralized finance is sort of that same idea. Instead of having these banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan controlling things, it's decentralized, right? It's give the power to the people. So how do these liquidity pools work? Well, let's get to the next thing. So decentralized finance, the big thing is DEXs, DEX. That stands for decentralized exchange. And that is obviously the opposite of a centralized exchange. And just like centralized, banking or centralized financial institutions, a centralized exchange is like the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, right? Those are exchanges where stocks trade. You can go and buy and sell from them. There's market makers and all that good stuff. So the New York Stock Exchange, you can list your company, you can IPO, right, on the New York Stock Exchange. And then the market makers, they provide liquidity for buying and selling these stocks. So what happens when you have a decentralized exchange, right? Who are these market makers? Where do they come from? How do you buy and sell these things? And where's the liquidity if it's not centralized around an organization that provides the liquidity? Well, that's where these liquidity pools come into play. So a decentralized exchange, what they do is they basically set up these automated market makers, or AMMs, and they're decentralized. So in order to get liquidity, there's people like me or you or anybody that wants to go out and transfer tokens into a liquidity pair, LP, liquidity pair. So what that would be is like, let's say you want to trade Binance USD, right? That's a stable coin on the Binance network, BUSD. And recently, if you haven't seen my video, I did a video about how to start staking or get into liquidity mining. And I did it on the ViperSwap Viper exchange, right? So viper.exchange is where you go. You hook up MetaMask and you can create a liquidity pair to provide liquidity, and then you can stake that in a pool. But going right down that path, if I decide that I want to do some liquidity mining on the Viper exchange and provide liquidity for the BUSD Viper trading pair, then what I do is I basically put up an equal amount, or a US dollar equivalent amount, of BUSD and Viper tokens. That gives me a liquidity pair that I am providing, and then I take that liquidity pair and stake it. And by doing that, I'm providing liquidity. So if people want to buy or sell between BUSD and Viper, I'm providing that liquidity. I'm allowing people to buy and sell, and so are other people that stake their tokens. So then the next thing comes into play. You, just as I, have probably heard, if you're watching this video, about these crazy percentages, the APR. So some of these pools will pay something like 23,000%, 4,000%, 700%, right? It's these crazy percentages. For example, if you look at a typical savings account right now from like Wells Fargo or something, they're paying like 0.02%, 0.04%. Like they're paying pennies on the dollar per year just for you to have money there. Now let's go to like a CD. That might pay 0.5%, maybe 2% if you do a really long-term 5-year CD or something like that, right? At a traditional bank, certificate of deposit. Now these liquidity pools are paying hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of a percent. That's crazy. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. However, what's happening is you are basically being the market maker. So just like with a centralized exchange, with the New York Stock Exchange, with the NASDAQ, you have centralized market makers that are providing liquidity. When you buy and sell, they're taking the other side of the trade. And when they do that, they're making a small fraction of a penny on every single trade that is placed on that centralized exchange. So with a decentralized exchange, because there isn't that central market maker, people like you and me are basically staking tokens and providing that liquidity. And in doing that, you're getting paid those fractions of a penny or the small transaction fee that you charge in order to place that trade and execute it in order to swap one token for another. And that fee is what's going and being paid out in terms of typically that exchange's token. So in the case of Viper Exchange, I'm basically accumulating these rewards, and these rewards are Viper. It's the Viper token, and there is a dollar, amount or price for this Viper token. So right now, I think today it was trading at like 86 cents per Viper token. So as I collect these rewards from having my liquidity pair staked in that pool, I get paid Viper token. So it's all these little pennies, but it's just constantly adding up. If you've ever seen the movie Office Space, you'll know kind of what I'm talking about. It's like these rounding errors, right? Where they're like, oh, we'll just take rounding errors off of all these transactions, a bunch of pennies, but it'll happen thousands or millions of times a day, and it adds up. So same thing with these market makers. These market makers are HFTs, high frequency traders, as you may have heard in regular markets, the stock market. They pocket and make money based on a ton of transactions happening all throughout the day, and they collect tiny fees. So same thing when you stake money in a liquidity pool, what you're doing is providing liquidity between the trading pair, and you're getting paid a fraction of that transaction basically, but typically in the token of the exchange. So in this case, I'm getting paid Viper. That's how I'm getting rewarded. So that's how you end up getting these crazy APRs. Now, these APRs fluctuate. It's not fixed. So for example, I started staking and one of the pools was paying like 23,000% APR. However, the value, the amount of money that was staked was like, I don't know, $600,000, right? So 600,000 of liquidity. As that goes up, the APR comes down. So think of it like this, right? If I'm the only person providing liquidity in a pool, I'm gonna collect 100% of the potential rewards, right? Now say there's a second person that comes along and says, hey, I'm also going to provide the same amount of liquidity as Kyle. Well, what's going to happen? Well, the total number of rewards is now basically getting cut in half. So instead of me getting all of the APR or reward tokens, I'm now getting half. So if the APR was 20,000%, by one more person joining, that APR now gets cut in half and is now only 10,000%, which is still obviously significant and crazy, but the point is, if I'm getting, let's say 0.1% per transaction, and I'm the only person there, and there's a ton of transactions happening every day, I might end up getting 2, 3, 4, 5% in transaction fees every day. And because I'm the only liquidity provider, I'm collecting 5% a day. That means 5% times 365 days in a year, I'm getting 15,000% or something like that. I don't even know if that math is right. But that's where it adds up. So that's how you're getting these crazy high APRs, and that's how they're actually getting paid out. So by providing liquidity to these pools, it's not really that crazy that they're paying these things. However, the risks are obviously that when you stake, your funds might be locked up for a certain amount of time. So for example, if I was providing liquidity between BUSD and Viper and that pair, and I locked it up, and let's say it's locked for 1 year, that means if Viper goes down by 90%, I've lost 90% of the money that I just staked. Let alone if I'm getting paid reward tokens in Viper, well, the value of that just went down by 90%. So I just lost all of that money, right? So those are sort of the risks. I'm not going to get too much into that, but basically there's the discrepancy between the prices of the liquidity pair that you're trading. If Viper goes up in value versus BUSD, or if Viper goes down in value versus BUSD, there's different ways that you can either have appreciation or depreciation based on those funds. And if you were to withdraw from that pool, you would, I guess, realize that gain or loss. I'm not going to dive too far into that, but I'm hoping that this general overview of how they can actually pay sort of these, what are quote unquote crazy APRs, makes more sense. I've started to wrap my head around it. It starts to make more sense to me. They're basically collecting these micro fees on hundreds or thousands of transactions a day, and that all adds up, right? So at the end of the day, the simple thing is, if I'm providing liquidity in a pool, so I'm taking the other side of these transactions, I'm getting paid 0.1% if I'm the only liquidity provider, maybe 100, 200, 1,000 times a day, which adds up to 1, 2, 3, 4% a day, which means if I'm doing that 365 days out of the year, if I'm getting at least 1% a day, that's 365% APR. So that's where these crazy APRs are coming from. It's based on how much of the pool's liquidity are you providing. So as more and more people join the pool, the APR might get cut in half, might get cut in a quarter, might go down by 90%. But even if you're still making 200, 300, 400% a year, that's still a crazy return. You just have to weigh, what are the risks? How long is my money staked for? When can I actually withdraw it if I wanted to? Could I withdraw it in a week, 2 weeks, half a year, a full year, right? How long is your money tied up? What are the risks of that actual, I guess, coin or token or whatever it is? What are the odds that it goes down in value, up in value, all of that stuff? So there are risk rewards to play here, but at the end of the day, these APRs aren't like some crazy number. It's more just that you have to think of it in terms of, what is the risk reward? And then by taking on that said risk reward scenario, how am I getting paid for it? And then the other thing is how many other people are staking, right? So as more and more people stake, the lower that APR goes, because there's more people that are all eating from the same pie. And I hope this was helpful. I think I've explained this pretty well. I could be completely wrong as well, but this is my understanding. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. Be sure to check out my other video. It sort of walks through the process of actually creating a liquidity pair, providing liquidity, and staking within a pool. I've done so on the Viper exchange or ViperSwap. However, there's many other exchanges such as UniSwap. That's another very big one. It is a decentralized exchange, and you're basically providing liquidity for different trading pairs on that decentralized exchange. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, if it was, please give this video a thumbs up. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching.